On June 22nd, President Trump ordered U.S. airstrikes on 3 nuclear facilities in Iran, thus entering the conflict between Israel and Iran. How successful were those strikes? With analysis, I'm joined by foreign policy analyst, co-host of the War and Freedom podcast, Dr. Walid Phares. Walid, President Trump wrapped up his trip to The Hague, to the NATO conference this week. He spoke about the strikes on Iran this way.
As you know, last weekend, the United States successfully carried out a massive precision strike on Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, and it was very, very successful. It was called obliteration. No other military on earth could have done it, and now this incredible exercise of American strength has paved the way for peace with a historic ceasefire agreement late Monday, and we call it the 12-day war.
Walid, the administration today, Pete Hegseth and others, said the Iran nuclear program was decimated. There have been early reports that they might have missed the targets. Now the CIA is even reporting that the nuclear targets were, quote, severely damaged. What is the real story, and is this war over?
The real story, Raymond, is that this is the first president who actually made the decision to go and destroy, at least try to destroy, this very dangerous nuclear program, which was in the hands of a jihadi regime, which has demonstrated on and on that it is against not just Israel, which they bombarded, and we saw it on TV, but most countries in the region. No president since the end of the Cold War, till our president, have at least tried to do something. Now, the strikes were successful because they were done by professionals, and they were like surgical strikes. Some of the critics said, well, we don't see it. Well, you have a mountain, and if you don't want to see the mountain, you know what you do? You just throw a tactical nuke. This is something we can't do. So think of it as a root canal. This is the mountain. They did the surgery, got the bombs under the surface of the mountain, and blew up everything. That is, yeah, I mean, a third grader would understand that nothing would survive it. Now, I would ask another question, which is what would the regime, the Islamic regime in Iran, would do? Not about the raid. The raids were successful. It's gone. But to what extent the regime will go and try to obtain from China, from Russia, or from North Korea, using the ceasefire, this time not just an aid and support to rebuild it, which is going to take 2 years at least to get there, but a tactical bomb. That's where our national security should be focusing. That's where our intelligence should be focusing. And that would be the real challenge that we will have in the future.
Walid, will Iran come to the table and negotiate in good faith now? I mean, the Ayatollah is making more threats. You've seen that.
Look, you and I have discussed it God knows how many years, and we kind of agreed that this is an ideological regime. And as long as the ideological regime didn't dive into a deep reform, like maybe the perestroika, the Russian perestroika, when Gorbachev said, okay, we were Marxist-Leninist, now we're going to change. If you don't see this with a jihadist regime organization in Iran, in Syria, in anywhere, in Afghanistan, they are still on their original strategies, global jihadi strategies. So, no, I don't trust that the regime will come to the table of negotiations in the intention of going towards peace. It's too fast. But I will believe that the regime could use the tactic of going to the table of negotiations and do the same thing they've done, tried to do with President Obama, President Biden, which is to extract money. $150 billion from the Obama administration, about $20 billion, maybe more, from the Biden administration. But here they have a businessman. I mean, Trump will immediately realize if they are stalling, will immediately know. That's why he gave them 60 days. And that's why the Israelis on the 61st day actually took action. And that action, we can discuss other aspects of the action, allowed the United States to do what they've done with the nukes. And now Trump is relaxed, telling them, if you want to come to the table of negotiations, we could do business, we could go towards peace. He's going to give them the list, including the Abraham Accord, including stopping funding Hezbollah and etc. So he has the command of it. But what their goal is in reality is to wait 2 years for this administration to face its first test of the midterm, or 5 years until it leaves.
Walid, based on what you know, were Iran's nuclear aspirations dashed by this action, or will more strikes be necessary? I mean, they say they can rebuild this in a matter of years. Can they?
They can, but look, who's going to help them? They've done it with $500 billion, half a trillion over 20 years. So obviously they can, demand, ask the Chinese, the Russians. The Russians are too busy with the Ukraine war. North Korea is trying to feed its own population. They're not going to go into adventures. China may, but again, I have reservation about that citation of China, because China wants to do a business deal much bigger, the mega, the mother of all deals with the president of the United States. Are they going to risk all their credibility with President Trump to go just help the regime in Iran to rebuild? They're going to be on their own. They're going to go to the private sector. Maybe if they agree with China to sell all their oil, this is a card that the Chinese will use with our president. It's going to be difficult. But regardless of who's going to help them, I just maintain again, and that's information not just from what we have here, what they have there. I mean, people inside the regime, people inside the militias of the regime. Minimum 2 years to get to those places. I mean, just imagine if you want to build a house, you have 6 months to do the foundation. That's a house. What has been destroyed is like almost the size of a city.
Well, what about the uranium? What about the enriched uranium they already had, Walid? Where is that?
Either under the rubble, or yes, I agree, there may be a possibility that they saved a few. But uranium needs this whole construct of enrichment to get there. Yeah, they saved a little bit, but that's not going to give them the bomb. The only way is to buy it either from the black market or North Korea at this point.
On Wednesday, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, she railed against what she called the propaganda media and accused them of undercutting Trump's handling of the Iran strikes. Gabbard confirmed that new intelligence has affirmed the destruction of those key sites involved with nuclear development and enrichment. Walid, why was the media initially downplaying the success of those strikes? We once again have the problem of intel leaks as well.
Well, you have two problems. Problem number one is the leaking coming from within the valleys inside the intelligence community. President Trump was only here for a few months. He didn't really reform. He didn't go in the intelligence community and reform it in a sense that they will be aligned with his policy. So there are quarters inside that community who are, in line with the opposition, in line with criticizing him, in line with destabilizing the administration. There are other things that they have been doing, and that's why the head of ODNI, the top of the intelligence network that we have, who is an ally of President Trump, she is admitting that basically there is an internal problem to be resolved, in my view. But also the second problem is the mainstream opposition. I mean, we know who in Washington doesn't know that the mainstream opposition is still faithful to the Obama doctrine, to the Iran deal, and maybe some of its consultants profit from the $150 billion that were transferred to the regime. So they are fighting for what they have, those interests, political, maybe financial.
Walid, you recently wrote about Israel's strikes on Iran's jihad militias, which I found fascinating. Here's the quote. Perhaps the most significant development has been Israel's strikes on the regime's jihadi militias deployed across the country, primarily to suppress the people. This weakening of the regime's core is what truly matters. It creates an opening for the population to finally express itself. Is regime change in the offing, Walid? And will the U.S. have a role in facilitating that, despite the president's word that he wasn't interested in that? I mean, you pointed out that the vast majority of the Iranian people want to overthrow the Khomeinist regime, but there are reports that the military's reached out to the administration. What's the actual state of things?
Okay, so first of all, the president. I know a little bit of the president. I was his first announced foreign policy advisor, so I know him, from the fresher years. He can make a lot of statements. He has his own strategy to deal with the various forces that he is confronting, he's balancing with, he's maneuvering with, sending a plethora of messages all over the place. In one tweet, he could say something, he reaches his goal, then in the next tweet, he surprises everybody else. So let's keep the tweets of the presidents to the analysis of what the president is doing. But when it comes to what he has done, he destroyed the nuclear power at this point in time. But his ally, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and Israel, being close, dealing with the future of the region and therefore with the regime, have done something, I would say, incredible. They understood the code. They understood the game. While we as Americans destroyed the nuclear system, they went ahead after that raid that we've done and started to hit the Basij militia. Basij militias are the lowest rank of the SS, right? Those who are deployed around Tehran everywhere and have one goal, and that goal is to suppress the population. That goal is to break down any attempt for a revolution, because only a revolution from the inside, an uprising, call it whatever you want, and bring down the regime. It's not from the air. It's not from the sea. It's going to be from the houses and cities and villages. And the Israelis understood that. And they had more, maybe 4 days, 5 days, they were very close from hitting the over 100 positions of the militias, and then the population of Iran would have actually gotten inside those positions, got the weapons, got to the police, and then threatened the regime, which explains, Raymond, and allow me this important statement here. The reason for why the regime actually ran to Qatar, there is a reason. It's not just the bombardment by the Israelis and even the collapse of the nuclear system. It's the militias that were decimated by Israel that could have provoked an uprising, and the regime would have been gone. So nobody would negotiate with the regime once it's gone.
So is the Ayatollah
challenge.
still in control, is my question. There are some reports that the military has reached out to the administration, and though the Ayatollah is making threats, as he is today, is he isolated? What's the state of things now?
There are two reports that I have learned about. Number one, the report that parts of the militias and the IRGC have, and also of the classical army, Artesh, have reached out to the head of the opposition, one of the heads of the opposition, Prince Pahlavi. That's the statement that we heard from him, and that would help, making sure that the part of the armed forces are not moving against the population. But this is what I've heard. But what we heard as well, and that's even more important, is parts of the military. We don't know if it's the militia or the Artesh, that's up to the administration to say it, reached out to the administration saying that we can replace the Grand Ayatollah with another Ayatollah. It's not yet what we want. We want really an open society, elections, etc. But that's better than nothing. Now, to answer your question, already Ayatollah Khamenei was not really in control. He was the big dude and he made the speeches, but he's on the one hand too old. On the other hand, it's really the guard, the IRGC, known as Sepa Pasdaran. This is the SS of the regime. They own the banks. They own everything. They own the control even of the nuclear weapons when they were around. And they are the ones who could negotiate.
Well, we will leave it there. Walid, thank you for your insight as always. And your book, An Imperialist Republic and U.S. Policy, is available in bookstores everywhere and online. Walid Phares, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.